Hello and welcome to the latest session of Tech Insights. My name is Shelly Calhoun-Jones and I'm a Technical Marketing Director here at Cohesity. And today we're joined by Mark from Cohesity Academy. Mark, would you like to do an introduction?
Absolutely. Thanks, Shelly. I'm Mark Baugher, Director of Technical Education here at Cohesity Academy. My team and I develop training programs, hands-on labs, and certifications that help IT and security professionals build and validate the skills they need to protect and manage their data.
Oh, that's great. Well, it's wonderful to have you here, Mark, and real excited to have you. In this episode, we're going to talk with Cohesity Academy about the importance of cybersecurity education. As we all know, for those of us that are working in technology, you probably know that it's an ongoing process when it comes to learning. And with ongoing training, what this does is it helps professionals transition into this field using practical skills, whether you're an end user of a security operations team. Education really does help with recognizing threats, understanding how to protect data, and also adapt to new challenges. So through tools like hands-on training, you can build the confidence needed to help succeed in this fast-paced, high-demand field. Mark, can you share a little bit more about your background and what inspired you to pursue cybersecurity?
Yeah, great question. My career started nearly 25 years ago in education and technology, but cybersecurity became a passion when I realized just how big of a gap there was in people's knowledge. I've seen companies invest millions in security tools only to fall victim to basic human errors. So things like clicking a phishing link, using weak passwords, or misconfiguring security settings on their systems and services. It became clear to me that technology alone isn't enough. People need to be empowered with knowledge. One moment that really solidified this for me was working with a company that suffered a major data breach because of a misconfigured change management system. Now, that attack could have been completely avoided if the team had proper training on security and securing and testing their backups and their policies in order to be able to recover quickly from the event. That's when I knew I wanted to dedicate my career to building smarter, more resilient cybersecurity and data management teams. At Cohesity Academy, we don't just teach security concepts, we give people the real world skills that they need to protect data and then to respond to threats effectively.
Yeah, it's a really good point that you mentioned about for a lot of organizations. These could be professionals that are transitioning from different fields. They could be moving from a storage background. They could be learning cloud computing. They could be a developer that wants to become more of a DevSecOps type person. So it's neat to see that we have these tools in place that will help people transition. They may not be able to do it all in one day. They might be doing it on the weekends or using microlearning, but it sounds like by having all those tools in your tool belt really does help move you along and keep you up to date with what's happening out there.
Yeah.
Just a thought. So no, that's wonderful. So just from a general data breach and cyber risk perspective, how do you think security training really helps individuals prevent these type of events?
That's another great question. You have a moment ago mentioned the tools that we have, and something I like to consider in that is, you can give somebody a chisel, but it doesn't make them a carpenter, right? So from my point of view, security training is the first and the strongest line of defense against cyber threats. So most breaches don't happen just because hackers have this, brand new groundbreaking technology. They happen generally because of human mistakes. So for example, there's some recent data that was released this past December 2024, where phishing and social engineering attacks alone account for between 70 and 90% of malicious data breaches. So beyond phishing or social engineering, security training also ensures that IT teams and users configure systems correctly, that they can prevent compromised accounts from being used in a malicious way, that they apply patches before attackers can exploit these, now recently known vulnerabilities that big vendors generally release out to us, and that they can respond effectively when an incident does happen. So it's not just about knowing what threats exist. That's part of it, of course. It's about developing instincts. So when something does happen, when a real attack happens, teams react immediately and correctly. Correctly is a big part of that, especially when you talk about leveraging things like clean rooms in order to respond to a malicious attack.
That's a really good point that you bring up, Mark. Not only understanding the tools, but also the environment that you're working in. I know that when I used to work in a security role with large companies, that was a challenge that I saw a lot, was working with teams that may not know their full network topology. They may not know the full suite of security tools that they have at their disposal. So a lot of times you're learning on the job, whereas, wouldn't it be nicer if you could learn more in a concentrated type sandbox environment? So that's really, really cool. So, just from a general trends or technologies perspective, how do you think the learning in cybersecurity is going to change over the next couple of years, or just the overall future of learning in the field?
Yeah, well, so cybersecurity is evolving at a breakneck speed, right? And training has to find a way to keep up with the new technologies. 16 years ago, it was, the introduction of cloud and SaaS-based applications. So you had this single point of contact where a malicious, would-be, attacker really only needed to have this one account to gain access and do things. So, it changes constantly. And you mentioned being able to do things and learn things specifically in an environment where it's not going to get you into more trouble, to test these different, skills out. So 3 ways in which I see this, evolving in our field of educating, cybersecurity professionals in the field is, well, first, I think the biggest one of them all, it's AI and also automation, a part of that. So attackers are learning and leveraging or weaponizing AI to create more sophisticated attacks. So security professionals have to learn how to fight fire with fire, as it were, using AI-driven threat detection, automated response systems, and machine learning-based security tools to leverage, preventative measures and responses against those sort of attacks. And then you also have an area which is known as cyber ranges, or simply put, live attack simulation environments. So just a professional reading about security isn't enough, right? If you go through a collegiate level course, as an example, you don't just get the book. The book's already expensive, right? Don't get me wrong. But you don't just get the book and then the professor walk away and go, okay, guys, the final will be in X amount of weeks, right? You got to learn how to do things. So reading just isn't enough.
Yeah.
Live attack simulations or simulated environments, which, as I said, are also known as cyber ranges, they provide that real world battlefield where the learner can experience attacks, analyze the threats, and then practice responding in a controlled environment. And at Cohesity Academy, we emphasize this hands-on learning or hands-on labs where it's skills-based, where learners detect ransomware, recover data, and develop real-world security instincts, as I mentioned earlier. And then the last way I see this changing is security as a shared responsibility, right? So cybersecurity is no longer just for IT teams or IT professionals or the security admin. So whether you're a developer, you're in HR, or even an executive, everyone needs training. And I expect to see more role-based learning paths that tailor security education to every job function. So the future is hands-on, AI-powered, and role-specific, because staying ahead of threats requires these real-world experiences to get there.
Oh, I love it. That is the best way to learn. I'm a hands-on learner myself, so having the ability to build something and also having the ability to tear it down, it gives you a better understanding of the technologies that you're working with, and you don't have to worry about doing this in a production environment. It's completely isolated. So that is really, really cool. So just another question related to making things more accessible for your students. Do you have any other teaching methods that you use? Any other tools that really kind of help reinforce what the students are learning? And I think we already talked a bit about the hands-on exercises and the simulations that you're doing. Are there any particular methods that really resonate with your students?
There is. And, part of it is making the information stick, right? The stickier, the better. There was research many years ago at several different universities that found that regardless of how long your training session is, whether we're talking an entire semester, a week-long class, whatever the case, that generally on average, you only retain about 30% of the information. But then they found if you can make it not only relatable, but saying fun when we're talking about cybersecurity is kind of a tough, phrase to really do without kind of chuckling. But making it fun, right? That matters. And cybersecurity is already so complex, but great training can make it simple, engaging, and practical for the end users and for the learners. So within the Cohesity Academy, we focus on a couple different things. The live attack simulation environments and the hands-on labs, like you said, they don't just watch, they do. We provide simulated cyber attacks. They can analyze, detect, and respond. Gamification is another big one, and it's started to get even more so over the last, say, 6 years or so. So being able to actually pit teams together in these sort of real world scenarios. So red team versus blue team sort of exercises, putting together leaderboards and making activities into a game and into a challenge helps that information stick a lot better. And then, of course, there's the role-based training, where we actually tailor a lot of the challenges and the exercises specific to the role. So, if we're talking, an HR role-based training that we're doing, we're going to get into areas like, compliance, regulatory, GDPR requirements, things like that when it comes to people's PII, along with, other roles that we specifically target for security training. So when training is interactive and relevant, especially when it's fun, people actually retain the information and seem to be able to apply it a lot better. And application is everything.
Yeah, and people are competitive.
Yeah,
Especially when you're working in that type of game type environment. It kind of works almost like a team building exercise in a way.
Right.
Can you share a success story where preventative cybersecurity training made a measurable difference, just based off of your experience?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'd like to almost kind of pivot that question to an opposite, because I feel like the measurable difference can really be seen only by what it could have prevented. And so I think there's a great example that showcases really what cybersecurity training, effective training, could have made a measurable difference with. Right? So a few years back, there was a ransomware attack on a major infrastructure organization company. And this led to widespread shortages, panic buying, and over a total $1 billion in losses. Because it's not just about the ransomware cost or the cost of recovery. The costs and the losses trickled down through things like supply chains, availability of resources, that sort of thing. So attackers gained access in this example through a single compromised password. This, forcing a total shutdown that disrupted the supply chains across the entirety of the United States. And that could have been prevented, right? With proper security training, cybersecurity training, we could have found ways to ensure that there were stronger passwords. But you know how people can be. Even if you have stronger password policies, somebody might just take a Post-it note and stick it on their monitor with their password. And if there's no other guarantee that compromised password can't be used, then if that's a privileged account, MFA policies, could have been leveraged. And there's a lot of talk about how just that one simple thing, if implemented ahead of time, could have prevented these systems from being brought down. There's also incident response readiness. Teams need to know how they can actually respond to an event when it takes place and not just shut everything down because they're worried about what that compromised account might be able to do.
Right.
Then you have the zero trust and network segmentations. A breach in one system, for an example, shouldn't have an impact on the entire organization, such as what this one did. So this wasn't really a technology failure or a tool failure. It was a lack of preparedness, a lack of training. And in my opinion, cybersecurity education isn't just optional. It's the frontline defense against these sort of billion-dollar disasters that I'm sure we all hope to avoid.
Also, just putting it in practice, taking the knowledge that you're learning and implementing it into your incident response process, DR, business continuity, knowing the teams to contact if you do run into a major event. All of those pieces really come into play when you are dealing with a live security event.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Well, I really appreciated your point on customizing security training for different roles. not just from like a, learning plan perspective, but also just customizing the training for your audience. That really resonates with me. And, since I learned best by doing, I love the idea of going through a realistic security scenario. And also, I found your comments on AI really important because not only is it becoming more common on the threat landscape, but we're also seeing a lot more security teams using AI to help combat threats even more effectively. Mark, if there are any takeaways about cybersecurity education that you might want to share with the viewers?
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest takeaway is that cybersecurity isn't just an IT problem anymore. It's not just the security admins, the IT staff, the tools owners. It's everyone's responsibility. The best investment I feel that a company can make is in its people and educating them on how to best prevent these kinds of attacks from taking place in the first place, and then how to respond to them if they do. Technology changes fast, but a well-trained team can adapt. They can detect, they can respond to threats faster, hopefully faster, right, than the attackers can exploit them. If you're not training, then you're leaving a critical gap in your security. And also, and we can't forget, at Cohesity Academy, we're here to help. So because when your team's prepared, your data is better protected.
No, thank you, thank you so much. Thank you so much for your time. I need a little bit more coffee, but I do want to. I do also want to mention that Cohesity Academy offers not only role-based courses, they offer certifications, the hands-on labs that Mark mentioned. We provide a plethora of different tools that will help you with optimizing your data protection, your recovery, and your storage. And with those flexible learning paths and expert guidance, you can really equip your teams with operational efficiency and protect your enterprise data even more seamlessly. If you want to learn more, visit cohesity.com/academy. This wraps up another episode of Cohesity Tech Insights. Thanks for watching, everyone.